lovely. So now we have Gillian Maddigan. She's going to be talking about body language. I actually had a session with Gillian and it was just freaking amazing. I cannot tell you how fantastic it was. I just stood in front of the camera and she just nailed me, like, told me all this stuff about myself that I didn't even know. So take it away, Gillian. You can unmute yourself, start your video. There she is.
Hello, hello. Okay, I'm just going to work out where I'm going to put my chat so I can see you guys. And welcome. I've been really looking forward to this. I mean, there's all this heat and experience coming along for a whole 6 months before we arrive to this session. So I'm going to be moving around a fair bit, because this is my kind of jam. I don't sit and watch or talk. So I move around a fair bit. If I'm moving in and out of the camera and it's annoying you, I do apologize. Hopefully you'll get what you need. So my name is Gillian Maddigan. I'll just give you the basics of who I am and where I've been and how long I've been doing all this stuff. I've been a clinical hypnotherapist, NLP practitioner, for 27 years. It takes a big breath in to do that. I used to be a practitioner who had a clinic and did lots of sit-down sessions. And I realized fair way in that I was spending a lot of time on people's stories. And I sort of went, you know what, this is just too much time spent on people's stories. How can I actually get to the point and hone my questions so we can get deep fast? And also a deep tissue therapeutic massage therapist. So I knew about bones and muscles and how people created who they are. And I also trained in psychosomatic therapy, which is the combination of understanding how the mind talks to the body and how the body is created from the womb to now. Now, your client has, or someone you've engaged with, or in your relationships, anywhere that you actually work with people or create relationships or create communication, the body has this conversation, this engagement. You may not realize what you're reading. Everybody reads people all the time. They read body language, they read how people move and squint, and their face actually will flush and contract, and their whole body will tell you a story. But most people actually don't know what that story is, because they just get an experience of what's happening from reference points where they've come from. So when you really understand what you're looking at and what is yours and what is theirs, it gives you a deeper understanding on how to hone your questions to get them to open their door into their world. So I used to do lots of sit-down sessions. Now I do a lot of Zoom. And how do you do lots of body language in Zoom, or a hypnosis session or a therapeutic session on Zoom? Understanding how to read someone beforehand. So getting a whole lot of tools online beforehand, you can read cues that you don't have to sit down and go through the VAKI process of watching blinks and looking for physical twitches. Because if you can read a face and get an understanding of how that person communicates, they never really communicate the way you do. So there's all this challenging aspects of understanding how that person communicates. So me, I've got lots of tissue, I've got quite big eyes, and I actually can communicate with visual and kinesthetic experience. I don't really communicate auditory. I'm learning. I'm learning to do it. At 56, I'm learning to do it with my ears. But most people don't actually listen the same way as you do. They don't understand the same way as you do. So finding out what their mode of communication is opens the door. Once the door is open, then you can get in there and you can do a lot of stuff. So why am I talking about all these features and things? Well, when you're on a Zoom call, because this is where we've been for the last 2 years, and maybe some people will be continuing that without getting face to face with someone in body, in person. It doesn't matter whether you're on a Zoom call, you're on a phone call, even if you've got a picture of them, you can have an insight into their world and how they communicate. So when I look at a face, I'm looking at not just their skin, their features, the makeup they're wearing, the way they have their hair. I'm actually looking at their bone structure. How did they create the foundations of who they are from within the womb to now? Now, when you're in the womb, you're actually influenced by the mother. The mother is having all these experiences, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're your story. So you can accumulate all this resonance from your mother because of her story and the things that are going on around her. Now, this could be physical, mental, emotional. It can be financial. It could be that there's no support, or there's a previous pregnancies that didn't go well. There's a whole lot of stories that go around in the mother, which then starts to filter into the embryo. As the child grows within the womb, it's taking on this information. Now, this is not the mother's issue. This mother's just living and this child is growing. There's not much you can do to change that, but you can teach the child when it comes out to have a different experience. Having an understanding of how that child is being influenced by another story. Sometimes when they sit down in your chair, here's this 40-year-old person and they're telling you this story, and you can feel that there's this disconnection. It doesn't sound true, because it probably isn't. It's probably not their story. It may be a story that actually was embedded in their bones as they grew. So a bit of genetics, a bit of influence in the womb, then we have conditioning and repetition. So and the environmental experience that we're growing up in the family or the social structure around. So all these things are bombarding a child and they're sucking it in, and that goes bone deep right up until girls is about between 15 and 18 and boys up to 22. So that structure, that bone structure, is holding on to those memories, and it creates the foundation of who we are. The flexibility between the bone is how they can adjust, how quickly or easily or over express a particular part of who they are. Then there is the bones then create this foundation for the muscles, and the muscles is about all the repetitive patterning and response that you get. And as a therapist, you would understand that when you put an anchor in, it's actually creating a muscle response. You just that person keeps doing the same thing because it's effective, and then after a long period of time, or even sometimes a short period of time, the effectiveness dissipates, but the pattern is still there. So as therapists, you probably realize that they're the things that you're actually changing, that pattern response that's unconscious and sitting there. So when you access it, you can't just overwrite it, because it's a repetitive pattern that's attached to the foundation of their being. But you could bring their attention to it and then negotiate with that pattern. But why do your clients hide stories? Because they generally feel unsafe or they don't want the discomfort of letting go, because it can be truly scary to let go of something, even though it may be redundant and actually impacting negatively on their lives. It's like that jumper that you have, and it's got 1,000 holes in it. It's moth-eaten, but it's molded to your body beautifully. Like, you don't want to let it go because it's related to comfort. So even the most horrible things in people's lives can be a comfort because it's known. But when it becomes unknown and you're asking them to step into the unknown, it becomes really challenging for them to let go. So they create all this story. And the more they say the story exists, the more invested they are in that kind of comfort of that jumper, the comfort of that story. So then they will keep repeating that story because that's their barricade. So how do you get under that barricade? The way to get under that barricade is to learn how they listen, how they learn, how they connect, how you can step into their zone that they are feeling safe in and get them to open the door. Because when I first started out, therapist was God, and they were the person who was going to make that person's life better. And if you had to take a battering ram to the client, you did it. You just have to find that hole and open that door and wedge it open until you could get in that program to change. That's the way it worked. I was God. Damn, God. Being God is exhausting because they keep coming back and they keep coming back with the same thing. And I have the attention span of Dory. So for me, it was boring. It was like, oh, I want something new. I want something new. I want something new. I've heard this story 50 times. Why am I coming back to this same story with this client? Because of the comfort zone, and I was wedging the door open. They weren't willingly opening the door and negotiating with change. So, it was very exhausting, and I got very tired of being the therapist. So I thought, I'm just being a hypnotherapist and NLP practitioner and working on bodies. Why aren't I using my psychosomatic therapy? I had grown up, I'd come to Australia as an immigrant. As a 7-year-old, I spoke English, moved from beautiful tropical New Guinea seaside to Central Australia, where there was nothing and the sun just wanted to suck the moisture out of you. And they spoke this weird English. Like, I spoke English really well, but they spoke this weird English. So all this communication was falling down. I had to find another way to learn to communicate. So I became a watcher. I watched people. I watched them intently, how they were going to react, how they were communicating without the words. So in that, I didn't realize that I was already training myself in body language. Long story short, at 28, my husband passed away, and I moved to the Gold Coast to be closer to my dad, who was really into all this new kind of stuff, new age, new spirituality, all this type of stuff. But he was also developing psychosomatics that can be utilized in therapy and analysis. Psychosomatics, for me, is the language between the mind and the body and how they talk to each other. And I didn't realize that all that training that I was doing for myself was the basis of body language and the basis of psychosomatics. Learning to read people's body language, but not just how they're doing all this, how they're doing all that, but actually, how did they create the pattern that creates the response? Because Body language exists because there's been a response. And when there's a response and it's continuous, like it's back and forward, it creates this juicy muscle till it becomes a muscle that you're unaware of. And then it becomes protective. You create more tissue over the top of that muscle to protect that response, to nullify it down. And that's why people tend to put tissue on over the surface. So those are to slow that response down. They don't know how to change it, but they want to slow it down. Whereas other people take all the tissue off and they become reactive. They're the ones that turn up in your chair and everything's no, yes, what, no, and they're firing things at you and they're dodging and weaving with everything that you're trying to work with them. They're the ultimate spitfire. You know, they're dodging and weaving every which way, but where they need to go. So there's a couple of different ways. So then you have people with this layer of tissue over the top, or they're right down to the bone, their skin and bone, because when there's no tissue, no cushion between the skin and the bone, they're accessing their life when they were growing up. So I'm going to pause there for a second. Anybody have a quick question? And I'm allowed to have a drink of water, I think. Okay. So now back to the face. You may only have a photo. So I'm just going to do a quick screen share here. I've got to get the right screen I'm on. Excuse me one moment while I mess around. While I'm looking for that. Why won't my screen let me do this? I'll keep talking while I'm doing. So if I'm not looking at you, please bear with me. I use Zoom all the time. My screen sharing. Oh, there we go. That's why. I had the pictures of all of you over the top of my screen share. So I'm going to show you a picture here. Can everybody see that? Can everybody see that picture?
Yep, we can see that.
There's a body in the face. Now, with the body in the face, you don't actually need to see a full-size body. You can actually read, whoops, that's not very good. You can actually read someone without seeing their body at all. You don't need to see how they're moving. You don't need to see how they're sitting in the chair. You can actually just read their face. So if you can see the body imprinted over the top of the face. Now, everybody's features, when they're proportionate to your face, they will sit in those three sections. So the mental, emotional, and physical. And they will sit evenly left and right as well. So your left is your inner world, your feminine, your creative side, your inside. Your right is also your receiving side, sorry. Your left side is also your receiving side. Your right side is your giving, your outgoing, analytical, calculate your risk, and that masculine energy of doing. So when you have a look at someone's features, sometimes, more often than not, 90% of the time, they are not, actually 98% of the time, they are not balanced. One is bigger than the other. One may be set deeper, one's maybe more forward, right down to the middle of the nose, your nostril sizes, the lip shape, your eyes, and even your forehead, the way your hair comes around. So each feature should naturally sit in the quadrants. But when they don't, they're speaking to you. each feature is speaking to you. It's telling you something. So when it's something is really open and naturally open, not like staring open, and it sits comfortably, then the energy is moving in and out, whether it's the audio, the visual, the kinesthetics, the taste of life, or the mind. If each thing is in balance, you're taking in information at the same amount at a time. That doesn't happen very often with people. There is a little thing here. Zoom can trick me left and right. Some will mirror and some will not. The best thing to do is when you're working with a client, you say, lift up your right hand. And that'll tell you which side of the screen they're doing. So I'm actually mirroring mine because it messes with my brain if I lift up my right hand and it's doing it on the other side. So depends on the person. So if a feature is underexpressed, it may be tighter, it may be smaller. If it's overexpressed, it may be bigger than what is comfortable in that face. So do you understand what I'm saying, everyone? Nodding, no, yes, cool. It's good to have some nods. Now, another aspect is if you're doing any health work, if you're looking for something that's happening in the body, the face will tell you. So if somebody is having something challenging around their breathing, you can look at their nostril size, the type of muscle structure, all around this area here, which is lungs and diaphragm. If they're having some issues around their digestion or sensuality, and sexuality, it's these lip area around this area here. If it's their feet, it's their chin. If it's their heart, it's around this area. If they're overthinking things, I'm just going to change. So each part of the body speaks. And if anybody does any energy work, it shows up in the face. It also, if you're doing any in-person stuff, it shows up in their feet and their hands. So that every part of your body is talking to the person in front of you. It's gossiping about you. It is telling stories about you, and no matter how good you think you're doing with your stories, your body may be telling people a totally other thing. And that's why people get really disconcerted when they meet you or they have an engagement with you and they go, you can see them doing weird things with their face, or they're starting to question what you're saying because you're not being congruent with your body language. So that leads me to the next thing. Know what your lens is. Know what you do and how you view the world. Because each one of us is full of stuff. Is totally full of stuff. And if you don't know what your stuff is, it could be what you're viewing that person through. So when you're looking at someone and you've got stuff coming up, you're going, the question to ask is this about me or is this about them? Do I have a story about this? Or is this their story? So you need to be able to work with yourself and do work before your client turns up. Now, I must ask, how many of you have your own therapist? How many of you work with colleagues and do swaps? Please, everyone, have your hand up. Because you are the tool that may be actually causing a problem for your client. Because if you're not cleaning out your stuff on a regular basis, your lens is, your filter is actually probably not helping your client. I learn a lot from my clients. I go away and I go, oh my God, I had a reaction to that. I was triggered by that. I was whatever. So I'll go and do some work around that. So it cleans it up for me. So I gain with my client. So if you're turning up the same person every week with your client or every month or whatever it is, and you're getting the same response, you might need to do some work on yourself. And learning how your face works, learning how your body works. And, you know, things happen in life. 2 years ago, I couldn't walk. I had created a contract with my mum that I would support her as she was going through her palliative care. And no matter what, I would be there at the expense of my own body. It broke. It broke. And I have had to, the last 2 years, I've had to teach myself to walk again, to stand up on my own 2 feet. And every client that has come to me has helped me create this strength within myself. But I had to do the work while I was working with my clients. So I attracted the people that needed me and I needed them. But when you get to a point where you're seeing the same type of person over and over again, it's probably you. You probably need to do some work because you're stuck. There's not much freshness coming in. So when we understand how people communicate, so I have this forehead that goes straight up and down and has this little bulge here. So I'm a recovering SOSer. I have to work with it every day. It's called shiny object syndrome. I have this really great imagination that can override reality at times. But damn, it's great for my clients because I can get into their model of the world really, really quickly. I know that I have that. And I also work with other people that are a little bit more specific and action taking and don't get too caught up in the creativity. I used to have small, tiny ears because when I was growing up, I didn't want to listen to anyone because all the noise that was around me wasn't really helpful. So I stopped listening with my ears. I became an observer with my eyes and how I felt. So I'm a bit of a synesthetic, kinesthetic visual. So when I see something, I feel it instantly. If I feel it, I see it in my imagination really quickly. It works 2 ways, you know. Smell takes me there really fast, and so does sensation. So how do you communicate? And you may communicate in a couple of different ways. So when you're learning, you may be communicating in a particular way, and when you're giving, you may communicate in a different way. How do you communicate? Because if you understand how you do it, then you're more open to understanding that other people do it differently. So if you've got someone with really big ears, they're great for picking up content, right? They're moving and picking up lots of information. But I just want to let you know your nose and your ears grow all your life because they're cartilage. So if you've got big ears, they'll only get bigger. They'll pick up more. They don't necessarily hone into the direct thing though. They actually will pick up more information, but not necessarily will you hear better. You'll just hear more. And that's why people with bigger ears later on in life find that their hearing is actually going. There's so much information they can't actually refine it down to something that they need. Noses grow all your life. Your nose is your personality and your identity. If your head is nice and straight, it's the first thing that touches the world. If you lead with your chin, it's not the first thing. It's how much determination you have. If you lead with your forehead, you're engaging your mind with other people. So if you're constantly writing like this while you're working with a client, you're giving your mind to them. And they may be a touchy-feely person. They want kinesthetic anchors. They want you to touch them or have a sensation. So honing your conversation around their particular, honing your questions around their particular mode of communication is key to connecting with them. So if I was working with someone with big ears, I would say, how does that sound? You know, when you do this, how does that sound? And can you hear what's going on when this conversation is happening? So I'm using lots of audio. If it's a kinesthetic person, how does that feel? And if I use how does that feel, because I'm a feeling person, how does that feel with someone who is mentally driven? They'll just look at you as if to say you're an alien. They're not listening to you at all because they don't have any connection with their feelings. That's not their first. Their first is their mind. So you need to change the words to suit that person's communication style. What do you think about this? When you're thinking about this, how does that fall into place for you? You know, are they a planner? Are they someone who needs to oversee? They may not be an action taker, so don't give them tasks to do. In the physical realm, you need to give them mental tasks to do, just to get them to open the door to you. So talk their language so you can get them to open the door. Or sometimes just to unlock it so they can crack it a little so you can get your head in there and go, okay? Because sometimes there's no time to do VAKID. There's no time. And you may actually only be seeing a photo of them. But the photo can give you the information you need. It can give you the basic information that can maybe help you knock on that door and get them to crack it open. Questions? I need another drink. Has anybody got any questions? Type away. A nose toucher. Ooh. So do you touch your own nose or do you touch other people's noses?
Listen, unmute yourself, darling, and ask Gillian a question.
Thanks, Trish. Hi, Gillian. That's amazing. I'm going to have to watch the recording many times over just to get all the gold that you shared. So thank you. So I had a question earlier on when you were talking about how the embryo in the womb takes on the mother's stories. And I guess it's kind of like the epigenetics thing. So the mother obviously is carrying her mother's and her grandmother and her mother, her grandmother's, etc. So is all that being fed down to the embryo in the womb?
It depends on how much work the mother's done. So some mothers actually will do the disconnection and they will let that connection, that pearl connection go and create their own story. And so there's a whole lot of things that actually occurs. But what I tend to do with some people is, can you pop your glasses off a minute, Alison?
Sorry, Dal. Yeah.
No, you're right. So you've got really quite big eyes. Could you speak again so I can have a look at you? Because
It could just be my makeup.
Okay. So you've got really quite large eye sockets.
Yeah.
So in the womb, there was this part of you that was really wide-eyed and like, there's so much around me. But over time, you created this protection around your heart. And also, there's the eyelid formation is really strong. I would say that some of that was formed in the womb. So your mother may have been an open-hearted person, but there was lots of stuff going on for her. So I would then say to you, what was the conversation? Have you ever had a conversation about how your mum's pregnancy was with you? And I just leave it at that. No, we go, maybe have a conversation with her, because it may be her story you're actually engaging with rather than your own story. And that has been one of the biggest door openers for my clients, that it's amazing, because once they understand that it's not their story, then they can create their own story. But as long as they think it's part of their story, it becomes harder to let go of, because it's been around for so long.
Absolutely. So as in my case, my mum's passed now. So if you have a client whose, mother has moved on to the next world or wherever their belief system says, how do you deal with that?
So when someone's partner, mother has passed on, or another family member has passed on, I have a conversation. I ask them to go and have a conversation with someone else, like their aunt or someone who had a different perspective, just to give them a little bit of just being able to step out there, to view it from a different way. An aunt, a father, or it doesn't matter. I was just curious about mum's pregnancy, what was going on in her life at that time, and it's amazing how that opens this can of worms, and all of a sudden there's this relief that they can have change. They don't have to live this fated life, and they can actually take up the reins of their own destiny and create it for themselves. They don't have to live this life that they thought that they had.
Right. Okay, lovely. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
That was a gift to give. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And my dog's in bed. I have to let him in. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Wonder is just asking, how does that apply to adoptees, so children that have been adopted?
They tend not to have, it depends on their adoption story. Who was that? I can't actually see. Who is just speaking? Help me out. Okay. So with adopted, it depends on their story. If they actually know, if they're comfortable with their adoption, go, and then you explore with them. What if this story wasn't yours? What would you do if this story wasn't yours and it was your mother's story? You want to bring in that aspect of possibility. What if? It's such a juicy question. What if? And then you can do, parts, or you can do timeline. If you could go back in your timeline, and what if this wasn't your story, and you could put something else back there and bring it forward? You can go through those now. Maybe that story that I had in my mind, that my parent, my mother abandoned me, or whatever it was, or gave me away, or she couldn't look after me, whatever it was, that is not the story. So imagine what was happening for your mother while you were in the womb and you were listening, or you were experiencing that. Maybe the story that you have doesn't really belong to you. What if you let that part go, or if you release that part and allowed yourself to move forward into the present? How would that experience actually be for you? So it's not necessarily about bringing doubt, but about possibility. Because when we have possibilities, human beings are just fantastic at creating. Even the ones that don't think they create, human beings are just amazing at creating. Super, if you give them an opportunity to do it in their mode. Now, it could be someone who's really very mentally focused. What would happen if you could think about a possibility, what would happen if you could feel that there was a possibility? What would happen if you could imagine there was a possibility? You know, so you're using all the different modes. Are you listening to the possibilities of this opportunity? So you're talking to them in their language. Did that answer your question? Yeah? Okay, who was next?
How are you?
Good.
You just unlocked something for me, genius. So I've been doing my thing in holistic therapies forever and a day, I don't know, 15 years plus, but I always keep myself, no advertising, hidden away with the attitude, people will find me when they need me, blah, blah. And when you just talked about what was happening in vitro, so my mum didn't know she was pregnant until 4.5 months into the pregnancy, and had just lost a child from cystic fibrosis. So she was told to not go ahead with the pregnancy, blah, blah, blah. So as soon as the acknowledgement happened, it was based in fear and anxiety, and then there's a disconnect, and I'd never felt connected to my father. And apparently he, at the same time, was, you can't do this. You've already had a nervous breakdown. If this child dies as well, you'll be gone. So I think, because I don't even like celebrating my birthday or nothing, like I don't acknowledge any achievements, just like, yeah, whatever, next. So brilliant, thank you.
I told you she was amazing.
And
Yeah.
I must say, your eyebrows, you've got these amazing eyebrows that go up in this lovely curve, and you want to be seen. There's a part of you that wants to be seen.
Yeah.
Keep opening yourself up, but then that story, closes the doors.
Hands you down.
And you reach out, but
Yeah.
at the last minute.
Well, I'm only just letting clients finally leave some testimonials and reviews now. Like everyone used to ask, I go, no. People will find me when you need me.
Did I give you another thing? You've got really great ears. You're really super listener. You listen with, see how, look at those ears. You listen with your emotional being.
Yeah.
And then you internalize. So you don't look like you're listening, but you're listening to everything.
Oh, I'm a strong kinesthetic as well. So I'll feel it then.
Kinesthetic.
Yeah.
So you're the person in the cafe that can hear the conversation behind you. and you go, did you hear that? And everybody else is going, what? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And you do pick up, so the curve at the top of your ear is really high. So you do pick up the nuances, not necessarily, it's not all just content. You pick up all the little bits.
Yeah. I'm clairaudient, so then I'll be hearing the spirit talk as well on top.
So Lily has a question as well, so I'll spotlight Lily for you.
Cool.
Thank you.
So Lily,
Hi.
sorry, I muted you by accident. Unmute again.
Go, Lily.
There you go.
No, she's on mute.
She's on mute. My bad. I clicked the button. Now I confused everyone.
No, still on mute.
Oh,
There you go.
There we go.
cool. I've got to say, when you first started speaking, Gillian, I burst into tears. I had to sort of tuck my head down because I was a bit embarrassed. It's, I can relate to what Megan said in a way. My mother escaped a communist country, lived in fear for 3 years, came out, married my dad, came out, was pregnant on a ship, arrived here and didn't know what to do with herself, let alone what to do with a baby. And I had a conversation with her. She's still alive, but I had a conversation with her after my dad passed. What was that like for you? Because I started to do a little bit of work on myself around that because I didn't want to touch it. But I'm like a magpie. I see shiny things that I run. I don't complete things. I have a million ideas. I've never validated myself as a coach. I do great things for my clients, but that's their business, not mine. They have great success, but I look at it and I go, whatever, let's move on to the next thing. And, you know, it's like I'm stuck in this vortex of, I don't know what the vortex is. I just know that I am stuck in this vortex. I'm terrified of moving out of it. People tell me I'm great as a coach because they get results, but I don't feel that because I'm a high kinesthetic. I don't feel that for myself. And it's like you've just gone boof, boof, boof in the nicest possible way. And it's like, oh my God, what do I do now with my life?
I'll just give you one more thing. Can you turn your head on the side like this?
Sure.
Oh, cool. Thought so. So you've got this lovely eye ridge, right? You've got this lovely eye ridge. It's great for managing. It's an overseer position. So when you engage with people, they start talking and you can see the big picture like that instantaneously. Your memory sits back further. The only thing that you need to be aware of is that there's a falling back around here in your forehead. So you see the big picture, but then you don't feel that support on the masculine side. If you have a look at your face, can you hold up your right hand? Yeah, that right hand.
The other right hand.
So this part of your forehead, see how it dips away?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That's a masculine foundation. So the thinking foundations on the masculine side. So how your father actually turned up in your life that created that masculine doing support side. So when the bone is exposed and there's no muscle to fill up that space, there can be a feeling of loss of being able to step out into your own space and feel strong about yourself because there's no muscle there to feel it, right? So it's about teaching. And the cool thing about muscles is bones you can't change unless you break it or have an operation. But the cool thing about muscles is you can create one. And really, the muscle that you create up here is the joy muscle, the muscle that stimulates that nerve that sends all your good onboard drugs pumping into your system. So the more you smile, really smile at the world and yourself, the more that muscle gets pumped up and the more pleasure you have in doing what you do.
That makes sense. I don't really, I smile when I'm with other people, but I don't smile any other time.
Highly recommend everyone who can do this is getting yourself a whiteboard marker and every mirror and every picture frame that has glass on it, draw a smiley face in the top corner. So every time you walk past it, because when you smile, it engages this muscle and it triggers that release, that beautiful drug release.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bless, bless, bless. Who's next?
We love you, Lily. We love you.
Oh.
You're a munchkin, okay? Remember?
Thank you. I love you too, Trish.
Yeah.
You make me cry. Stop it.
It's about you, though. It's not about what you do for others.
Just
Does Millie love Millie?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Who's
she
up
made me
next?
cry, guys, and I didn't even say much. I'm a bit of a yabber, and she just looked at me and she's like, cry. And I'm like, no. I was gone. So yeah. So thank you so much for that, Gillian. I have placed your ebook and your webpage on your inside of the chat as well for everybody to access. So yeah, guys, please reach out to Gillian on her webpage. She's absolutely amazing. Beautiful stuff, beautiful work. I am so pleasured to have met her in person and to have had a session as well. Okay, so reach out to her. She's absolutely fabulous. So thank
Thank
you
you,
so much.
group. Awesome.
So we will break for about an hour and 10 minutes. The lunchroom will be open in 10 minutes if you want to pop in there and have some food and just talk general cats, dogs, funny videos, whatever it is that you're doing. And we'll do that, and then we'll continue on after lunch. Okay, guys? So have an amazing afternoon. We'll catch you in the lunchroom. Okay, guys? So
Thanks,
see you.
Gillian. That was
Thank you,
amazing.
Gillian.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Pleasure.
darling.
Such a
Thank
lovely
you.
class. Thank you. Thanks, Trish.
So much.
Ooh.